18, and you can go to 1 Samuel's. And the reason why I was mentioning genocide was because if the Bible, the biblical commandment was to kill the people, enslaving them is one notch below that. So it doesn't make sense to talk about morality when you're talking about going into an entire village of Amalekites and destroying and killing the entire population, not leaving even the animals to be alive. There is no such injunction that you will find anywhere in the Quran, and I once again challenge you to find me a single verse or a single hadith to that effect. Now, you wanted, pardon?
21.
Yeah, no, it's not 21. Get it? Yeah, so now let's quickly talk about what he talked about. The hadiths that he mentioned were false. That the black people on the right and the left. This is not, the word used in that hadith was not black. The word was dark. And this is in the Quran, wujuhum muswadda, that they will have darkened faces. And in fact, ironically, this kind of language is used when men practice something called infanticide. When they kill daughters that are girls, that their faces will be darkened and so on, and there's a reprimand in the Quran for that. It doesn't mean that it's talking about the race. And he talks about two black people being the thing for one. How is that the case? When Bilal ibn Rabah was bought by Abu Bakr as-Siddiq for a high price, very, very high price, and then when he was told afterwards, he said, I would have paid even more for him. So this is nonsense what you're talking about. Bilal ibn Rabah, which everyone knows who he is, married Hala bint Auf, who was an Arab, and he became the mu'adhin of the higher echelons of that particular Islamic society. There was no mention of his race in the derogatory way whatsoever. In fact, we have a narration where Bilal was actually abused by Abu Dharr al-Ghifari because he said to him that you're the son of a black woman. The Prophet got angry and he responded by saying, what have you said, and reprimanded him and told him not to say such a thing. So all of what you're doing is distorting and completely decontextualizing that which is correct. You haven't actually had any response for that which I've mentioned, which is that Jesus Christ, who is meant to be inseparable from the body of the Trinity, he is inseparable from the Trinity. He is the one who commanded to genocide and to enslave. You'll find in Numbers 31:18, you'll find in Deuteronomy chapter 21:10, you'll find in First Samuel chapter 15 verse 2, and this, look, you find here, whoever strikes his male or female servant, this is Exodus chapter 21 verse 20, whoever strikes his male or female servant with a staff, and if they have died by his hands, he shall be guilty of a crime, but if he survives for 1 day or two, he shall not be subject to punishment because it is his money. You see, if he beats him so badly, that he doesn't survive, he doesn't get any crime because it is his money. This is the heart of objectification, of commodification, of all the things that you're accusing Islam of. You have no answer, my friend, to the emancipatory discourse that we find in Surah Al-Balad chapter number 90, and the fact that freeing slaves was something which is in the zakat obligatory. Also, you'll find in chapter number 24 verse 33 that it's mentioned mukataba. And mukataba is the idea of somebody comes who is enslaved, and according to one opinion, according to Tafsir al-Qurtubi, that they have to be freed. If they say we want to ransom ourselves, they're enslaved. So in other words, the so-called master, you have to be freed, so that's another thing you can bring. Go ahead.
All right, Muhammad is repeating his same erroneous points again. Who is Mohammed Hijab? Let's ask that simple question. His own scholar, Islamic scholar, says Mohammed Hijab is an infidel. Why do I say this? Because his own Islamic scholar, Sheikh Saleh Al-Fawzan, says slavery is part of Islam. Slavery is part of Islam. Slavery is part of jihad, and jihad will remain as long as there is Islam. So slavery is part of Islam, slavery is part of jihad, and jihad will remain as long as there is Islam. And he goes on to say,
it sounds like good
he goes on to say, they are ignorant people like Mohammed Hijab here who think slavery, Islamic slavery has been abolished are ignorant. They are not scholars. He said of people who express such opinions. They are merely writers. Whoever says such things is an infidel. Why does Mohammed Hijab say what he says at Hyde Park? Because he knows he can't say what this gentleman said from Saudi Arabia in a nation like ours. He knows it. If he says what he says from Saudi Arabia, he knows Islam would not spread even the tiny little bit it is attempting to do now. And that is why he doesn't do it. And that is why the Saudi Arabian Sheikh calls him an infidel. What do we find? He said Bilal was a black guy and treated with great respect. Bilal said to Abu Bakr, my dear friend Sahih al-Bukhari says, 557.99 it says, Bilal, even up to the time of Abu Bakr, remained a slave. And that is very important for you to know. I don't care what he did. I don't care if he called people to pray. I don't care if he sang a few songs or any of those things. The question is, how did Muhammad treat him? Muhammad treated Bilal as a slave. So continued Abu Bakr. Muhammad was quite happy with this. He was quite happy with slaves continuing as slaves until the end of Islam, which is the end of times according to Islam, according to Muhammad Hijab and any other knowledgeable Muslim. So the problem is this: in Islam, blacks, unbelievers, especially women, are treated in a bad way. They are seen as cattle, pigs, all sorts of derogatory terms. This resulted in harsh treatments of sex torture. Female slaves were tortured. Quran Surah 4:24, Quran Surah 4 verse 3, Surah 4 Ayah 29 and so on. Please answer, Muhammad, if the Quran says that Muslims can take any of the captive women who their right hands possess and have sex with them at any stage, any stage. Do you agree with this? If you had a wife who is a non-Muslim, and if Muslims were to get hold of her and say, she is my captive, I can do what I want to do with her, will you be happy? I'm assuming you won't be. And therefore, you need to agree, Islam does terrible things with slaves.
I'm assuming.
Like I said earlier, Bilal, manumission, a great one of 5 pillars according to Muhammad. The problem, like I said earlier, Surah Sahih al-Bukhari 3:765, Sahih al-Bukhari 5:57.99, both of them are against this. Slaves were asked to continue as slaves.
Alright, let's one more each, yeah? We don't want to spend like another 2 hours. I think it's settled after all.
Okay, really.
I'm gonna say this again. I have one, then you have one, and then I finish because you started. Okay?
Yes. So so you. Yeah.
I'm gonna speak, then you, then I conclude, and then that's it. Yeah?
Okay.
Alright. What's that? 2 rounds?
No, one more.
Right.
Yeah.
So 424. وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. Where does it say you can have sex with slaves at any time and all this stuff that you're talking about? It doesn't say that at all. All it says is that you're not allowed to marry a woman who's married except what your right hand possesses. What your right hand possesses doesn't mean that you can have sex with them whenever you want. In fact, the idea of raping a woman, whether she is a slave or whether she's a wife, has been spoken about by the Salaf of this ummah, or the predecessors. Al-Shafi'i mentions it in Kitab al-Umm. Even Imam Malik mentions it, and the punishment of it is a corporal punishment, something like whipping and so on and so forth. So this is not something that Islam endorses at all. And the evidence of that is the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad where he says, "La darar wa la dirar." You can't harm or reciprocate harm. How can you rape a woman, whoever she may be, in Islam without causing harm? So this is something that is completely falsehood, and it means it's obligatory, even if the slave master didn't want it. Which is, if this opinion is respected, as good as abolition. This is as good as abolition. If this opinion is not respected, then it's not. He talked about Salah al-Fawzan, I'll mention that in the conclusion.
Yeah, start.
Okay, all Muslims have a very important question to ask today. On the one hand, you have the Bible. A claim is made that Islam and the Bible, New Testament and the Old Testament are Abrahamic in origin. But what we find are clear differences. In the Bible, we don't talk about racism. We don't talk about abolishing of slavery in the way that he wants them to be spoken of, because the Bible never had slavery like what Islam ever had. What you find in the Bible is the story of God empathizing with slaves, the nation of Israel, redeeming them and leading them on to freedom. This is the story asked. And on the back of that, God of the Bible says, Exodus 22:21, He says, not to mistreat a stranger or oppress him, because you yourselves were strangers in Egypt. So across the Bible, what you find is God of the Bible demanding fair treatment of everyone, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, language spoken and so on. And God is seen as God who is impartial in the Bible. And I asked Muhammad multiple times, can you show me a place where women were taken as sex captives? And he couldn't show that. All that he's talking about are a few places where there was political war and entire people groups were asked to be wiped out by God. Now God, my God, God of the Bible judges. If he has a problem with that, well, I can only say judgment is coming. And a few of these judgments came in the past. Amalekites and so on. Judgments came. In contrast, what do you find in Islam? In Islam, Islam clearly says that the black people are not worth as much as the Arabs. One Arab guy is worth two black guys. Black people are like raisin heads, unbelievers are like cattle and so on. And this resulted in very harsh treatments. Sex torture of female slaves, you find in various portions of the Hadith and Quran, 4:3, 4:24, Surah Al-Kubra, 2:227 and so on. Multiple places you find sex torture of female slaves, Umar torturing female slaves. No rights being given. Quran, Surah 16, Ayah 75 says, slaves control nothing, no right whatsoever. And that free men cannot be punished for the murder of a slave. Quran, Surah 2, Ayah 178. Also repeated in Tafsir Jalalain. So the point is, torture of sex slaves, no rights. Free men are not equal to the slaves. So clearly no equal treatment. And this therefore resulted in Muhammad not permitting or not allowing manumission to happen. Sahih al-Bukhari 5:57-99, 3:765. You find Bilal continuing as a slave. If Bilal says this to Abu Bakr, if you have bought me for yourself, Sahih al-Bukhari 5:57-99. If you have bought me for yourself, then keep me for yourself. But if you have bought me for Allah's sake, then leave me for Allah's work. He is pleading. This great guy, who is the one who calls people into pray for prayer, he is pleading. If you have bought me for the sake of Allah, leave me alone. But you have still keeping me as a slave. So Muhammad continuing to keep people as slaves. Sahih al-Bukhari 3:765. 5:41 and so on. Slaves working for Muhammad.
You know, he said that the Quran says that disbelievers are like cattle. It doesn't say that. It says belhum illa kal an'ami belhum adallu sabila. That they are like cattle. No. They are more astray than the cattle. And as we've seen today,
worse than cattle. Worse than cattle.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? As we've seen today,
are better.
when they're trained, okay, be quiet now, please. Don't waste my time. As we've seen today, everybody, we have seen today that is the case. You're presented with straight facts and you cannot maneuver away from them. You cannot circumnavigate them. You cannot deal with them. You cannot hermeneutically, acrobatically, gymnastically get away from them. And the reality of the situation is you're dealt with the blunt truth in front of your face as clear as the day, and you're just scurrying, scared and absolutely anxious that someone like me, without a paper in my hand, knowing your scriptures more than you, and knowing my scriptures more than you'll ever know, dealing with you in the way that I've dealt with you. The truth of the matter is, al-abdu bil-abdi wal-hurru bil-hurru wal-abdu bil-abdi wal-untha bil-untha, it was actually abrogated. Chapter 2 verse 178 was abrogated with the ayat in Surah Al-Ma'idah where it was talking al-aynu bil-ayn, which is talking an eye for an eye, number one. So that's, and it wasn't what he thought it meant anyway, but it was abrogated in either event. Number one. Point number two, you keep mentioning Bilal. Yeah. Bilal was not a slave when he married Hala bint Auf. He was not a slave when he was literally ascending the Kaaba, telling the people, I'm in charge now, reciting the call to prayer in front of all the Arabs who are literally below him in physical stature. How dare you talk about Bilal in that manner when the Prophet said he will be the one, he can hear his footsteps in Jannah. The things that he said about all the hadiths about black people being in hell, every single one of them is false. None of those hadiths use the word black, none of them. In fact, like I said, the opposite is true. We have explicit statements from the Prophet saying there's no virtue over a black man over a white man, or a white man over a black man, an Arab over a non-Arab. There is no such statement in the Bible. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, we find these genocides of the Amalekites who he admits us to. He says this is them asking for it, basically. We want to be destroyed. No one asked for genocide, sorry to say. This is the kind of kalam that we find the Israelis doing with the Palestinians, inspired by that horrible Old Testament narrative. Moreover now, let's be honest. Let's be honest and say that even the New Testament, Jesus calling a non-Jewish person a dog. Yes, at the end of it, he said, okay, I'll give you whatever you want. But he still called her a dog because she was a Gentile. That's racism. Your book is fraught, saturated, filled, contaminated, polluted. It is seeping, brimming with racism, brimming with genocide, brimming with racism. You need us, my friend. We don't need anything from you. You come to us and you ask us, why was everything abrogated in the way it was? Because the Prophet Muhammad eliminated racism, the only person in his time to do so, and it was the only emancipatory discourse of any Abrahamic religion in the world, that is Islam. Come to it and stop being arrogant.
That's it. Finish.
All right, thank you very much, Muhammad.